Morning, everyone. Today's reading is from 2 Samuel, chapter 15, verses 1 to 14, and is titled Absalom's Conspiracy. In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses, and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anyone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him, "What town are you from?" He would answer, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there is no representative of the king to hear you." And Absalom would add, "If only I were appointed judge in the land, then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that they receive justice." Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. While your servant was living in Geshur in Aram, I made this vow. If the Lord takes me back to Jerusalem, I will worship the Lord in Hebron." The king said to him, "Go in peace." So he went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent secret messengers throughout the tribes of Israel to say, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpets, then say, 'Absalom is king in Hebron.'" 200 men from Jerusalem had accompanied Absalom. They had been invited as guests and went quite innocently, knowing nothing about the matter. While Absalom was offering sacrifices, he also sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, to come from Gilo, his hometown. And so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's following kept on increasing. A messenger came and told David, "The hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom." Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, "Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword." This is the word of the Lord.
Well, good morning, everyone. If you're new with us, my name is Matt. I'm one of the members of the ministry team here. I don't know if you've heard the expression, the warning about flying too close to the sun. It's one of those many expressions that kind of enters our everyday sayings. We know what it means, and some of us know where it comes from, but it's been around for so long. It actually comes from an old ancient myth about Icarus. So Icarus and his father are trapped in a labyrinth. They can't get out no matter what they do. The only way to get out is to get over the great walls of the labyrinth. So they have this plan, they're going to make wings in order to fly over the walls. The wings are made of feathers and wax, and Icarus's father makes that for his son to escape first, to send him out to freedom first. There is a warning though. And I think in this warning really relates to, after reading the 6 chapters we're about to look at this morning in 2 Samuel, I think it really brought to mind this concept. The warning is, firstly, don't fly too close to the water because the wetness and the wind will chop up the wings. And don't fly too high close to the sun because the wings are made of wax, so they'll melt and lose their integrity, and the result is catastrophic. So what happens is Egress flies over the wall. Successes happen. He's free, he's going, and then he gets a little bit too full of himself, a little bit too proud. I mean, he's flying now, of course. He wants to make the most of it. And what does he do? He goes higher and higher and higher, and obviously the wax melts, and he falls to his death in the ocean. The warning is about sticking to the middle. Staying where you're supposed to be. Don't go below, don't go too high. Know your lane. This is where you're supposed to be. When we look in our passage, it's a real message for us today and something to think about, because the world that we live in, which is very much about just getting yours, whatever you feel you're entitled to, just take it, get it, grab it by the horns and go for it, because after all, you deserve it. That kind of world we live in, I think that our passage teaches that actually you better be sure what you're reaching for and trying to grab is actually yours. Because the risk in reaching for what's not yours can often be far greater than actually, there can be a far greater risk, and the consequences can be catastrophic. As we look into where our passage starts off today, the consequences of David's sin, starting with he and Bathsheba, and then what's played out with his sons and everything else, are continuing to go on. David has shown himself to be an adulterer, a thief. He's coveted, he's murdered, and his sons, as we saw last week, are apples that haven't fallen far from the tree, unfortunately. They themselves have even seemed to go beyond committing sexual abuse and also committing murder. These consequences from something that happened so far back in the chapters ago is still finding its way out. The consequences are still continuing. And the effect is just going from locally, from David and his sons, and now the effect of it is starting to go out into the nation of Israel. David as a king was a king chosen by God. That meant he was someone that had to have some sort of stature, responsibility. He had an honorable place in Israel. He was the king after all. And the law, God's law for the king back in Deuteronomy was that the king is supposed to be one chosen by God, but also someone who writes out God's law for himself onto a scroll, which he is supposed to read out every day. There's a humility about the king of Israel. He is not the top person. God is the top person. God is shaping him and trying to help the king lead God's chosen people well. The law for the king is supposed to help the king, who is not necessarily like all of us, humble in themselves, be aware of the place they are under God and revere him. It's a position of great honor. Also, great honor, yet not to consider himself better than any other Israelite. That's who David was. There was glimmers of him growing into that. And then all of a sudden, everything has gone completely pear-shaped to who he is now. Now the position of king, it seems to be something that can be exploited, something that he can use to his own advantage. He can, out of his power, get what he wants, when he wants, and whoever he wants as well. He has turned this position into a power that can be used, and now we're seeing the consequences go from the local to the national. David, unfortunately, isn't seeming anything different to the other kings of the other nations. And that's a real problem, because he is supposed to be different. Israel itself is supposed to be different to the other nations. And because of his behavior, the role of king, his kingship, is now completely devalued. That honor, that respect that was supposed to be there is starting to crumble because of his behavior. And now to the point where actually it seems like, well, if someone like David can be king, well, I guess anyone can be king. And Absalom, his son, thinks, I could be king. All of a sudden, he thinks it's possible for him to take the crown from his father. It's possible because what's the difference? David isn't making a good example. If he can be king, what does it matter? I may as well be king as well. And you know what? I reckon I could do a better job. So in the background, Absalom is building an army. He's also building an army and building favor. It talks about the fact that Absalom is building an army and favor, and he seems to be whispering into the ears of the people, trying to promise them what they want to hear. Then Absalom would say to them, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there is no representative of the kings to hear you." And Absalom would add, "If only I were appointed judge in the land, then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that they receive justice. My dad is doing a terrible job, isn't he? But don't worry, give me the crown, and I will do a much better job. Everything you want, all the justice there, I will promise you that. Just give me the opportunity." There's some red flags, though, for Absalom that are coming out. The fact that he is building chariots, an army of chariots, which seems like a very sensible thing to do, but actually, for historically and culturally at the time, it actually tells us something. See, the chariots are considered something to be used by the nations. The other nations build chariots. They trust in their own strength. Israel doesn't, because they trust in the Lord. So already the red flag that Absalom doesn't seem to be trusting in the Lord, rather himself is coming about. He's also boasting in his own political greatness. He can do a much better job than his father could ever do. He is the one who's going to bring justice that his father can't bring. Just give him the opportunity. David has become a king like the other nations, and it seems once again the apple has not fallen far from the tree, because up and coming is a king, is someone who wants to be king just like the other nations. The role of king in Israel has been so devalued. What's the point? What does it matter? Who cares anymore? Anyone may as well be king at this point. And I think we as a nation in Australia have actually faced this as well during a very chaotic and confusing and tumultuous time, where we had so many prime ministers over a short amount of time that actually made us feel like, what's the point? Whether it be Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, or ScoMo. Who cares? Because we didn't vote most of them in when they first took power anyway. If anyone can just be Prime Minister, then what does it matter? This particular time in our recent history has actually shown itself to cause such a devaluing of our political leaders and the role of Prime Minister that the whole electorate is now disillusioned. The swings we can see are far more dramatic than they've ever been. Trust in our political leaders at an all-time low. The devaluing of that office has had significant implications on us as a nation. Because with this much turmoil, well, what's the point? Why does it matter? Absalom's doing one thing. He's causing an uproar. He's building an army. He's trying to be very sneaky about it. But David, unfortunately, isn't really helping either. David was such a brave person. He was the person that took on Goliath. He has fought many battles. He's taken on armies and he's done very well. He's a brave king. And what happens when the challenge from Absalom comes? Well, does he say, let's go get him. Let's take him on. My son will not succeed. I am king. I will keep us a strong nation under God. No, he says, come, we must flee. And none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, for he will move quickly and overtake us and bring ruin to us and put the city under the sword. This once brave king is now fleeing for his life. There is some strategy behind it, but it doesn't really give much comfort for the nation. When push comes to shove, when his throne is challenged, what does he do? He flees. It doesn't seem to give a stability that it should have. And you can see the upraising of the challenge starting to go out into the nations, when all of a sudden someone connected to his past, one of the descendants from Saul, seems to almost come out of nowhere and just goes to town on him. Shimei said, who is a descendant from Saul's family, "Get out, you murderer, you scoundrel. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has given his kingdom into the hands of your son Absalom. You have come to ruin because you are a murderer. David's behavior is coming back to bite him, not just locally, but now it's gone nationally. People are coming out. There is rumors, there is things going on in order to challenge his fitfulness for king. And not only that, he's now become a fugitive on the run trying to escape his son. The rumors are there, the challenge is there, and actually it's the echoes of the past. The exact same thing happened to Saul when his kingship was challenged by David. Rumors started about Saul's fitfulness, and there was a challenge there. Again, it's happening. But there is a difference. There is a difference this time round, and there is a glimmer of hope. David, in his power, could decide to have this particular person destroyed, have them taken over. He could do that, but he doesn't. Then David said to Shebal and all his officials, "My son, my own flesh and blood, is trying to kill me. How much more then this Benjamite? Leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look upon my misery and restore me to his covenant blessing instead of his curse today." The consequences of David's sin are still coming about. Following on from last week, we're at consequence 7 now, where the kingship has been so devalued. And it's because of that punishment that David got, that God said because of what he's done, he will have no rest. He will be at battle. Before the incident with Bathsheba, there was peace. There was calm. Israel was good. And now Israel is uneasy, it is unsettled, and its king is on the run. It doesn't give confidence to Israel for their king. It doesn't bring about confidence. It doesn't bring about a sense of stability. And it certainly doesn't bring about peace and prosperity. Consequence 7 shows us that actually we have a moment where the result of what happens when your character and your convictions don't line up. David was supposed to be God's chosen anointed king, which came with a certain responsibility to live and uphold that office in a certain way, to a very high standard. When push came to shove, in a moment of tension, his character and convictions as king no longer aligned. And the outcome is doubt on a national level, there is unrest, and also an open door to other people thinking they may as well be king now instead. That if David is like this, if anyone like David, a sinner like him, can be king over Israel, God's chosen people, then anyone can be. The kingship is devalued. And it's a warning for us. The warning about lack of integrity for us as believers. Because the lack of integrity opens a door, an opportunity for sin to creep in. If we can't respect those who are supposed to be respected, then the shift happens, doubt enters, and there's a foothold for sin. We may not be ourselves kings, not that I'm aware of. We may not be kings here. However, we do represent our true king. We represent our true king, and our character needs to reflect his character. When we meet people, people should get a taste of who Jesus is like. His character, his love, his grace, his wisdom should come out of us. If David acts like a king like the other nations, then he may as well be a king like the other nations. And if we act like just anybody else, we may as well be like anybody else. We need to have that distinctiveness. David was supposed to be distinctive. We need to be distinctive. That saltiness, that's something that is different that only Jesus could make. And we will face times when push comes to shove and we'll be tempted for character and conviction to no longer align. We need to trust in Jesus, trust in what he has set for us, the way he's called us to live and helps us to live by his Spirit to maintain character and conviction. The Apostle Peter warns some Christians who are also under a great deal of pressure. They are under persecution. Push comes to shove. It's very easy for them to misalign. And what Peter does, he says, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they may accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. The fact that our character convictions can align because of our faith in Jesus and how he empowers us to live for him is such a witness to the people that God has placed around us. It's when this happens, doubt enters. The urge you not to have that happen, urge you to maintain. Have faith in what Jesus has set for you, what he has modeled himself, and what it means to be a believer, even when push comes to shove. Because our character needs to represent our Saviour King. Our character needs to bring confidence, not cause doubt. Our character is so important. Why? Because other people's eternity is at stake. Let us not be the stumbling block of doubt to the truth and majesty of who Jesus is as our eternal King and the salvation he offers as a gift through what he has done on the cross. But there is something about our world that's just so dog-eat-dog. You can't help but be cynical. And actually, in the world that we understand it, how it works, where it is dog-eat-dog, the powerful seem to win. If you get enough street cred, then that's all the better to you. Absalom should be successful in his campaign. Absalom has the troops, he has the will, and he's got his own power that he's going to go get his. In our world, technically, he should win. However, there are clues throughout these 6 chapters that show that he is not going to win. He leads, as a first clue, he leads with the wisdom of the nations rather than the wisdom of God's nation. He believes and trusts in his own human might, the might that he is building for himself. He trusts in his chariots, in his armies. He trusts in his own determination that if he just goes and reaches high enough, then he will be able to take the crown for himself. He trusts in himself. And unlike David, even in his darkest times that we just saw, over all the chapters, he never inquires of God. He never pays any attention to God's will, whether it's right for him to do it, none of it. He is out for himself, by himself. There's the fact he leads with the wisdom of the nations, but also he's painted like a fool, which is a really big clue that things aren't going to go very well for him. Now, Absalom happened to meet David's men, and he was riding his mule. And as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak tree, Absalom's hair got caught in the tree and he was left hanging in midair while the mule he was riding kept going on. This is so Monty Python, it's not funny. You can almost hear the sound as he's being pulled up. We're supposed to see him as foolish at this point. Saul himself was shown as foolish very early on. Funnily enough, with the donkeys too. Saul's first task was to find the donkeys from his family. He almost went around the world and still didn't find the donkeys. And at this point, we're seeing Absalom is seen as a fool as well. He leads with the wisdom of the nations. He is shown by God to be foolish. And also, the real nail in the coffin for him is that God is working against him. Absalom and all the men of Israel said that the advice of they were given advice at this point. He had to decide which was right. The advice of Hushai and Arakai is better than the advice of Ahithophel. For the Lord had determined to frustrate the good advice of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom. God is at work behind the scenes, confusing Absalom, frustrating him, helping him to take the wrong advice in order that he will meet his end. Which he does. After this, David is organizing his troops under Joab. He commands them to deal with his son Absalom gently, not to take his life. Then a huge battle occurs, something like the end of most movies in this genre. A huge battle occurs in a forest. There's Absalom's forces, there's Joab's forces, and there are 20,000 casualties on Absalom's side. And then Absalom, riding a mule, is caught in an oak tree by his hair. And as the soldier reports this, the soldier refuses to kill Absalom. He reports where Absalom is to Joab and refuses to kill him because of David's order. However, Joab said, I'm not going to wait for like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart, while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him. And now we're at consequence 8. After all this, David's lost another son. David's behavior had led and tricked Absalom to think that he could take the crown from him. That if anyone could be king, then he may as well be king, and it was possible for him to take it. He flew far too close to the sun. He got too proud of himself. He took too much wind and flew up, and his wings melted, and he crashed to his demise. In a world where God's chosen king can break all 10 commandments like David did, but still hold the throne, Absalom was tricked into thinking he too could hold the throne as well. And obviously, at this consequence, David is shaken up. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. And he went and he said, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only you had died, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son." The truth is, it was never possible for Absalom to take David's crown. It was never going to happen. He thought it would happen. He felt he deserved it to happen, but it was never going to happen because God promised David that it wouldn't happen. Long before Bathsheba, long before all this mess, God promised David that he, God, would make David's name great, that he, God, will establish a dynasty for him, that he, God, would raise up his offspring to succeed him, that he, God, would discipline David, but with love, and his love would not leave him. God promised David that David's house, his kingdom, and his throne would go forever. It was never Absalom's to take. It was never possible. It was securely with David because God promised it would be. God helped David throughout this whole ordeal. He led him. He frustrated Absalom. He'd been refreshing him with people that God placed along his way so he could go further, and he stopped enemies. David was God's chosen king. Absalom was not. And now God's chosen king returns to his palace. When David returned to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he'd left to take care of the palace and put them in his house under guard. He provided for them, but he had no sexual relations with them. They were kept in confinement till the day of their death, living as widows. We start to see a glimmer of hope, a change in David after all this ordeal. He has concubines, but he's not treating them like that anymore. And also, because he will have no rest, he will always be at battle. His crown is once again threatened by a different person, by Sheba, but it's different this time. Sheba's unsuccessful, and what's very different is that David actually remains in Jerusalem this time. Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Abiach, and threw it to Joab. So he sounded the trumpet as his men depressed from the city, and each returning to his home. and Joab went back to the king in Jerusalem. Now all of a sudden, the glimmer of hope, David is staying firm in who he is as king. Absalom flew far too close to the sun. He wanted to be king. He wanted to take Israel, God's nation, and he lost. And he never had a chance. God protected David. He restored him. And at no point was God's will and plan for salvation ever at threat. Nothing will stop God about bringing his salvation. By sending his son, you saw that not even sin and death and the challenge of God's people themselves would stop bringing about God's plan for salvation through Jesus. When Jesus arrives, we see so many echoes between these chapters and what Jesus experienced, the Mountain of Olives, the Jordan River, riding of donkeys, and the fact that God's own people rejected him. At the heart of this is a sovereign God who is on a rescue mission, and he will not be stopped. Not by anyone, not even a prince who is so proud of himself, because Jesus, we know, is on the throne. Jesus is on the throne now. He is already victorious, and no one wicked, no nothing will take him down. Jesus has won, and nothing will change that. But the warning there from this passage is for us. What might it be that you are reaching too high for? What are you reaching out for that is not yours but actually God's? Because this is pretty much the definition of sin. Since the beginning, since Adam and Eve, they reached for something that was not theirs, it was God's, and since then the consequences have been playing out. What might you be reaching for that is rightly God's? What are you trusting yourself more rather than trusting God with? What we need to do is be humble. We need to accept this gift of salvation and mercy and love from God rather than proudly rejecting it. The question for you is this something you humbly accept, understanding your position with God, or would you rather fly too close to the sun and proudly reject it? Let's pray. Our loving Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your love and for your grace and for the sending of your Son, Jesus. We just pray that you'll help us not to fly so high that we don't recognize our own proudness. Help us to realize who we are in humility under you. Help us to realize that fearing you is the beginning of all wisdom. Help us to accept the gift of grace from your Son. And help us to live in great character in line with who your Son is, rather than who we may desire to be instead at times. And we pray this in your Son's name.